There comes a time in life when your silence speaks louder than any answer ever could. When you've seen enough, lived enough, and learned enough to know that not every question deserves a reply, especially now, especially in this season of life when your peace is more valuable than someone else's curiosity. You've earned the right to be quiet, not withdrawn, not bitter, just selective, thoughtful, protective. People call it being cold. Let them, because what they call cold, you now understand as clarity, and clarity is power. When you were younger, you might have felt the need to explain yourself, to answer every question, even when it made you uncomfortable. Maybe you felt obligated to defend your choices, justify your circumstances, or respond with a polite smile to someone who didn't deserve your trust. That's what we were taught, to be agreeable, to be accommodating, to not make waves. But in old age, there's a gift waiting for you, the gift of restraint, of no longer handing over pieces of your story to people who haven't earned it. Because let's face it, some questions aren't really questions. They're traps, bait wrapped in concern, curiosity disguised as care. And when you answer, you give away something sacred, your privacy, your power, your peace. Take this one, for example. How much money do you have? It sounds simple, maybe even innocent, but there's weight behind it, intention. Sometimes it's a relative fishing for inheritance details. Sometimes it's a so-called friend trying to measure your worth against their own. Either way, it's not about genuine interest. It's about control, about probing to see what you have and what they might get. You don't owe anyone that information. Your finances are your business. You don't need to explain your lifestyle or justify your spending. You've worked hard for what you have, and how you choose to manage it is entirely up to you. When someone asks, change the subject, smile politely, or say nothing at all. That silence, that's your boundary holding firm. And then there's the follow-up, a little more subtle. Who are you leaving your money to? Now the mask comes off. Now we're not pretending it's just a casual conversation. This question has one goal: to draw a line between people, to sow competition, jealousy, even resentment. Whether it's family, friends, or acquaintances, answering this opens a door you might never be able to close again. Suddenly you're not a person. They see you as an estate, a will, a transaction waiting to happen. You are not a prize to be won. You're not someone's future windfall. You're a living, breathing soul with the right to keep certain things private. And you don't have to answer that question. You don't have to explain who you trust, who you love, or who you plan to leave something behind for. That's between you and your lawyer and your conscience. Here's another one that stings in a different way. Why don't your kids visit you? Now we've moved into judgment. That question, more than anything, is a dagger wrapped in a smile. It's not really about concern for your well-being. It's often about assessing your worth through someone else's behavior. But people don't know the full story, do they? Maybe your children live far away. Maybe there's a rift, an old wound, a complicated truth you don't want to unpack at a family dinner or a community gathering. Maybe you've chosen distance for your own sanity. And maybe, just maybe, it's nobody's business. This question makes you feel like you've failed, like your solitude is shameful, but it's not. Your life doesn't need to be explained or defended. People drift apart for many reasons. And sometimes in choosing peace over chaos, you've had to let go of certain connections. That's not failure. That's wisdom. That's survival. Let's talk about a classic. How old are you really? It's said with a laugh, a wink, as if aging is a joke or a game or something to be embarrassed about. But when did growing older become something to hide? You've survived years of love, loss, joy, grief, and change. Every wrinkle, every gray hair, every line on your face is a story, not a secret. Still, you're under no obligation to state your age like it's a confession, because once a number is out, people start to box you in. They assume what you can or can't do, what you should or shouldn't want. They define your worth by the calendar instead of your character. You are not your age. You are your experiences. You are your resilience. You are your wisdom. So when someone tries to flatten your identity into a number, feel free to let the question hang unanswered. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Then comes the question that's equal parts intrusive and inappropriate. Are you dating anyone? They ask it with curiosity, sometimes with discomfort, sometimes with judgment, as if your desire for companionship should have expired with your last birthday, as if love in its many forms is only meant for the young. But intimacy doesn't retire, the heart doesn't stop hoping. And you don't have to explain or justify who you share your time, your energy, or your affection with. Whether you're in love, alone, or healing from something unspoken, it's nobody's business unless you want to share it, because you are still allowed to be passionate, to be romantic, to enjoy closeness and laughter and new beginnings. And if someone can't see that, it says more about them than it does about you. You may have also heard this one, sometimes from family, sometimes from the younger generation with raised eyebrows. Why don't you help out more? Ah, the guilt trip disguised as a question. This is where your boundaries get tested the most, because many assume that if you're retired or home more often, you're just waiting to be useful. But what they don't see is everything you've already given. Decades of labor, caregiving, volunteering, emotional support. You have helped endlessly. You are not required to exhaust yourself to prove your value. You have a right to rest, to say no, to prioritize your health, your hobbies, your freedom. Helping others is beautiful, but not when it comes at the cost of your well-being. You get to decide when and how you contribute. You don't owe an explanation for protecting your energy. And finally, perhaps the most dangerous question of all, what's the worst thing you've ever done? They say it playfully sometimes during a conversation about life's ups and downs, but it's a trap, because no matter what you say, it will be remembered, twisted, gossiped about, judged. That question isn't looking for insight, it's digging for ammunition. And even if your story is filled with redemption, even if you've grown and changed and healed, people will still hold on to the worst parts. They'll whisper them in rooms you're not in. They'll forget the lessons and remember the details. But here's the truth. They don't deserve that part of you. They don't deserve your confession, because you are not your worst moment. You are everything you learned from it, everything you chose to become after it. Let them wonder. You've earned the right to keep your pain private. Some things are sacred. Some things were meant to be carried with grace and silence. You don't have to explain who you were. You don't have to perform regret on cue. Growth doesn't require an audience. It only requires honesty with yourself. And you've already done that work. You've already faced the mirror, made the amends, walked the harder road. The people who matter already know the strength it took to get here. And the ones who demand to know the worst of you, they're not asking to understand you. They're asking to define you. Don't let them. There's something powerful that happens when you begin to guard your life like a garden. You tend to what grows. You protect what's fragile. You don't let just anyone trample through it with their muddy shoes and thoughtless questions, because peace is hard-earned. And in this stage of life, it's your most precious. People might say you've changed, that you're not as open, not as friendly. They might call it distance, coldness, even arrogance. But let them talk. You know better. You know that not everyone is entitled to your softness. Not everyone has earned your warmth. You've learned to conserve it, to offer it wisely where it can be received with care, not consumed with greed. Care came there is strength in not explaining, strength in letting silence be your answer. Because when you stop defending yourself, when you stop trying to prove your worth, something extraordinary happens. You feel free, free from approval, free from judgment, free from the exhausting game of image management. Think about all the times in your life when you tried to be understood, when you bent over backward to justify a decision, when you rehearsed the perfect response to satisfy someone else's standards. And then think about how it left you tired, second-guessing, chipped away by the need to be seen a certain way. That's not how you live anymore. Now you speak less and mean more. You listen to your intuition instead of your insecurity. You say no without guilt, and you let your dignity speak in the pauses between words. It's not coldness, it's clarity. You don't owe anyone an answer about your money, your family, your health, your past, your heart. You don't have to explain why you live the way you do, who you love, who you've let go of, or what you've endured to become this version of yourself. You're not hiding, you're honoring, and there's a world of difference. Being silent doesn't mean you're shutting people out. It means you're choosing where to open up with intention, with trust, with care, because not everyone deserves the key to your inner world. Some people only want to peek inside so they can rearrange what they find, pick it apart, or carry it off as gossip. And you've lived too long to let that happen now. You get to be quiet, and in that quiet, you get to be powerful. You are not here to be a museum exhibit. You're not on display. You are not here to satisfy someone's idle curiosity or help them feel better about their own insecurities by laying bare your own. There is something noble in becoming a little more mysterious as you age, something regal. You don't need to announce what you're doing, how you're feeling, or what your plans are. You simply live. You go about your day. You invest in your own joy, your own peace, your own pace. Let them wonder. Let them speculate. The people who truly love you will come closer. They'll ask better questions or none at all. They'll just be with you, present, safe, respectful, and those are the ones you'll open your heart to. There's a reason so many wise elders say less. It's not because they have nothing to say. It's because they finally understand the value of saying only what needs to be said and nothing more. It's because they've watched what happens when their words are misused, twisted, or taken for granted. They've seen the beauty of silence, the protection of privacy, the peace that comes from choosing not to engage. And here you are, with that same wisdom, with that same choice, to speak when it nourishes, to hold back when it protects, to give less of yourself to the ones who take and more to the ones who give back. You've lived through decades of giving, of answering, of being available. Now's your time to preserve, to protect, to turn inward and let the quiet be a sanctuary, not a prison. There's nothing wrong with being cold if it means you're finally safe. If it means you've stopped apologizing for your boundaries, if it means you've traded approval for authenticity, and if that makes some people uncomfortable, that's okay. Let them sit with their discomfort. Let them wonder why you don't offer up your story so freely anymore. That's their lesson to learn, not yours to carry. You've been warm your whole life. You've been open, generous, giving, and now you've earned the right to be selective, to draw the line, to protect what's left of your precious energy and give it only where it is cherished. You don't need to prove your kindness. Your years have already proven it. You don't need to explain your past. You survived it. You don't need to justify your choices. You've lived them. And you don't need to answer anyone's questions, especially the ones that are really criticisms wearing a mask, because your silence is not an absence, it's a presence, a powerful, protective, wise presence that says, I know who I am, and I don't owe you an explanation. You don't owe your vulnerability to those who haven't earned it. You don't owe your life story to people who only want to dissect it. You don't need to open every emotional door just because someone knocks. Some rooms are private. Some parts of you belong only to you. And that's not selfish. That's sacred. There's something deeply liberating about not explaining yourself, about letting people's assumptions roll off you like rain on glass. Let them guess. Let them wonder why you're quieter now, why you choose your words more carefully, why you answer less and observe more. Let them think what they want. You've come too far to spend this chapter of life narrating your existence for the benefit of others. You've realized that not every moment needs to be shared, not every opinion needs to be voiced, not every question deserves your truth. And with that realization comes peace, a deep, steady, unshakable peace that isn't loud or showy, but solid, like stone, like still water. It doesn't shout to be understood, it simply is. And here's something else. When you stop answering, people reveal themselves. They show you who they are when they don't get what they want from you. When you refuse to hand over your inner world, some will walk away frustrated that they couldn't pull you open. Let them. Those are not your people. The ones who stay, the ones who sit quietly beside you, who respect your pace, your silence, your timing, they're the ones who see you, not just what you can give. You have nothing to prove anymore. Not your intelligence, not your generosity, not your worth. If someone can't see it by now, they never will. And that's not your failure, it's their limitation. You are allowed to live without being deciphered, without being picked apart, without being made into a story someone else can use. You are not their entertainment, their curiosity, their emotional project. You are your own keeper. And your silence is part of how you keep yourself safe. You've probably noticed how people phrase things like they care when really they're probing. They'll ask how your health is, but what they really want to know is whether you're declining. They'll ask how retirement feels, but they're really measuring how useful you still seem. They'll ask if you feel lonely, but sometimes it's not concern, it's a subtle way of suggesting you should be. And you, with your years of experience, you know the difference. You hear the tone beneath the words, you read the meaning in their eyes. And so you respond with stillness, with grace, with silence, because you know that explaining yourself to someone who isn't listening is a form of self-betrayal. And you're done doing that. It doesn't mean you're angry. It means you're wise. It doesn't mean you've stopped caring. It means you've started caring for yourself first. Because let's be honest, for too long, you carried other people's comfort like it was your responsibility. You made yourself small so others could feel tall. You downplayed your pain, your brilliance, your truth to make sure no one else felt uncomfortable. And now, in this chapter, you're done with that. You are finally giving yourself the same kindness you spent your whole life giving away. There is a quiet dignity in not responding, a quiet strength in refusing to explain who you are to someone who hasn't earned the right to know. And it's not about building walls. It's about building thresholds, invitations instead of open doors, selective sharing instead of self-exposure. Because at this point in your life, your story is not up for public consumption. There are some things people will never understand until they've lived through them, and even then, they may still not see it. That's okay. It's not your job to convince anyone. Your job is to live well, to guard your energy, to give your love where it's welcomed, and keep your silence where it's needed. You know, there's this idea that aging makes people fade, that the older you get, the quieter your impact becomes. But the truth is, some of the most powerful people in the world are the ones who say very little, who've lived so fully, so deeply, that they don't need to raise their voices to be heard. You've become that person, a presence, a soul with weight. And maybe there was a time when you worried that being silent would make you invisible. But now you understand it's the opposite. It makes you unmissable. Because people notice when someone isn't scrambling to be seen. They notice when someone carries themselves with that rare kind of calm that comes from knowing exactly who they are. That's who you are now. Someone who doesn't flinch at silence, someone who doesn't need to fill the space, someone who knows that withholding isn't withholding love, it's protecting it. You've learned that not every battle is yours to fight. Not every invitation is yours to accept. Not every question is yours to answer. You've started measuring what something costs you emotionally before you give it away. And that's not coldness, that's wisdom. That's the deep, powerful wisdom of a life well lived and a spirit that finally knows its worth. And if someone calls you cold for that, smile. Smile, because they're still learning the lesson you've already mastered. Smile, because they can't see what it took to get here, the losses, the boundaries, the courage it takes to remain kind and guarded at the same time. Smile, because you know what they don't. That being cold is sometimes just being clear, and clarity is a gift you give yourself. Let them think what they want. You are not responsible for how others interpret your boundaries. You are only responsible for honoring them, for standing inside your own truth without needing permission. And that, more than anything, is the freedom you've waited your whole life to claim. You've earned your silence. You've earned your privacy. You've earned your peace.